Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Anne-Marie Lumsden. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Legal Services South Australia and Chair of National Legal Aid. It's my great pleasure to host today's webinar to launch our new National Legal Aid 5-year strategic plan. The plan is a significant milestone for National Legal Aid and the 8 state and territory legal aids it represents. But before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we are all meeting today. I'm speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains, and I pay my respect to elders past and present. I acknowledge their enduring cultural heritage, knowledge and beliefs, and thank them for their care and custodianship of these lands and waters for millennia. I extend my respects to any First Nations person joining the webinar today. National Legal Aid recognises that these lands were never ceded and always were and always will be Aboriginal land. Before we hear from our various speakers, I want to acknowledge and express my gratitude to all those involved in developing this strategic plan. The National Legal Aid team, led by Catherine McKernan, and my fellow Legal Aid directors. We would also like to thank Raised Perspectives Consultancy and particularly acknowledge the work of Paul Flowerdew in assisting us to put the strategic plan together. This plan is more than just a document. It's a roadmap for legal aids to collectively and with a determined focus work towards our goals so that we can better support and advocate for just outcomes for people experiencing disadvantage. This plan outlines how we will work with key stakeholders in this space, including others in the legal assistance sector, other legal entities, the courts and government. And this seems to be a good opportunity to now hear from the new Attorney General, Michelle Rowland, about the National Access to Justice Partnership and what she would like the legal assistance sector to achieve by 2030. Unfortunately, the Attorney could not join us today because Parliament is sitting, but she has kindly provided us with a pre-recorded address. Caitlin, if we could hear that now, thanks very much.
I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land where I join you today, the Ngunnawal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also extend my respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending this important launch. Thank you to National Legal Aid Chair Anne-Marie Lumsden and the National Legal Aid Directors for inviting me to speak today. While I'm unable to join you in person, I'm delighted to address you at this significant event. Today marks an important opportunity to look forward and set clear goals for the legal assistance sector over the next 5 years as part of the launch of the strategic plan towards 2030. I note this launch is the culmination of considerable work by National Legal Aid. And I acknowledge the many distinguished members of the legal profession here, both in person and joining remotely, and extend my personal thanks for the vital roles that you play in supporting our communities. The Whitlam Labor government established the first Australian Legal Aid Office in 1974. Since then, legal aid services have been a steadfast and essential part of our multi-dimensional legal assistance framework. Legal aid promotes the rule of law and helps ensure equality before it. It is through the dedicated work of legal aid providers that our laws and legal system remain accessible to every Australian, regardless of circumstance. And as Attorney General, I am passionate about supporting this sector and championing its crucial role in advancing justice and equality in everyday life. And that's why I was proud that my first official external engagement as Attorney General was a visit to a community legal centre in Western Australia. There I heard firsthand about the invaluable work of the Fremantle Community Legal Centre in supporting the most vulnerable in their community and about opportunities to grow and enhance these services in the years ahead. The National Legal Aid Strategic Plan outlines priorities for the next 5 years that align closely with the Albanese Government's vision for the legal assistance sector, especially as set out in the National Access to Justice Partnership. Since commencing on the 1st of July, This partnership represents a national agreement between the Commonwealth and the states and territories, and it will deliver $3.9 billion over 5 years to the entire legal assistance sector, including an $800 million increase compared to the previous 5 years. This is the largest investment a Commonwealth government has ever made in this sector, and it presents real opportunities to improve outcomes for vulnerable Australians. And among the outcomes that I want the National Access to Justice Partnership to deliver are a significant reduction in gender-based violence and genuine progress towards national agreement on closing the gap priority reforms and relevant targets and outcomes. The role of legal assistance in supporting these outcomes is clearly reflected in the National Legal Aid Strategic Plan, which includes a commitment to implement closing the gap, including delivering culturally safe services, supporting more First Nations services, and partnering with First Nations legal assistance partners on justice issues. The support provided by the legal assistance sector is key to addressing overrepresentation of First Nations people in the justice systems and the too high rates of domestic and family violence for First Nations women and children. The partnership will also drive long-term reforms to build a stronger, more sustainable sector, including improving data capabilities through a national legal assistance data strategy and enhancing workforce attraction and retention via a national workforce strategy. Once again, the strategic plan reflects these shared priorities, aiming to ensure safe and sustainable working conditions and culture to attract and retain a strong, engaged legal aid workforce. Today is also a chance to celebrate the dedication of legal aid staff and private practitioners who work tirelessly to secure access to justice for Australia's most disadvantaged. Every year, legal aid officers provide over 1.7 million legal services nationwide, continually striving to focus their efforts on those most in need and to deliver fair, equitable legal outcomes. Legal aid offers high-quality assistance through multiple channels, whether by telephone advice, court representation, integrated services, or community legal education. Private practitioners also deliver essential legal help across the country. And according to the recent National Legal Aid Private Practitioner Census, most are women working in small firms, often in regional areas. They are deeply committed to legal aid work because they want to make a difference in their communities. Yet the census highlights that sustaining the workforce more broadly remains a significant challenge. Today, National Legal Aid launches a strategic plan with a vision for legal aid services through to 2030. I congratulate National Legal Aid for this important achievement. It is no easy task to identify a clear and distinct pathway forward. The plan charts a collective direction for the sector, one that upholds justice, fairness and equity, especially for society's most vulnerable. It includes a strong focus on safety and wellbeing for families and children within the justice system, critical to tackling gender-based violence. This strategic plan is ambitious. It prioritises early intervention and prevention, stronger coordination across jurisdictions, and ensuring legal help is accessible, culturally safe and community-led. It highlights National Legal Aid's commitment to working closely with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations to improve outcomes and provide culturally safe services to First Nations communities. We know the sector faces ongoing challenges, rising demand, recruitment and retention pressures, and the need for better collaboration and cultural responsiveness. I am particularly mindful of the gaps in service delivery in rural and remote areas. But I'm also confident that this strategic plan will help address these challenges, positioning legal aid services to continue their invaluable work well into 2030 and beyond. So thank you again for inviting me to this launch of the National Legal Aid Strategic Plan towards 2030. I extend my sincere appreciation to everyone who contributed to its development, and I look forward to working with you as we implement its ambitious agenda.
Anne-Marie, you're on mute.
We are very grateful that the Attorney General provided the pre-recorded address. We were also very delighted to meet with her recently to discuss her vision about the legal assistance sector and how this aligns with the goals of the National Legal Aid Strategic Plan. And we also look forward to working with her. So now let's hear more about what is in the plan and what it represents in terms of the way forward. I'd like to introduce Catherine McKernan, National Legal Aid's Executive Director, to give us that overview. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, and thank you too for your acknowledgement of the work that has gone into producing the strategic plan. It was very much a collaborative effort across the legal aids and amongst the 8 legal aid directors, so we're very appreciative of that collaborative work. The purpose of developing the plan was to engage in longer term strategic planning about our work and the sector, and to do it in a staged way. We've called it towards 2030 because we really want to be in the best possible position as the NAJP is rolled out, so that when we get to the next agreement, we have all the things in place to really demonstrate what excellent services we deliver and how important we are to the Australian community. Through the plan, we want to establish a national legal aid system that is sustainable and responsible to the needs of disadvantaged communities. We want to use our experience and leadership to improve legal assistance and drive law reform. And we want to foster trusted partnerships with government, community, and legal assistance providers. As the AG mentioned, for the next 5 years, we have set 6 ambitious but achievable priorities. The first is to increase core funding from all levels of government for all legal aids, and this is to enable people experiencing disadvantage to access the legal support and representation that they need across all forms of legal issue. The second priority is to advocate for the safety and wellbeing of families and children within the legal and justice system, and do this through our policy and law reform work and the critical service delivery we do, particularly in the family law space. The third is to really look at implementing the Closing the Gap priority reforms, and that, as the AG has mentioned, includes delivering culturally safe services, supporting supporting and increasing the availability of more First Nations services, and partnering with our First Nations legal assistance peaks on justice issues. The fourth priority is really focusing on advocating in strategic areas of civil law, and particularly at the national level, so looking at disability, social security, migration, and other appeals of government decisions. And the fifth priority is really, really critical and very important, and that is to have a really strong evidence base for legal need and the impact of legal assistance for disadvantaged clients. We really want to see a really good national legal assistance data set, some excellent work on outcomes that measure our outcomes and our impact, and really show that we have really provide a strong evidence base for the legal assistance sector. And then finally, we want to ensure safe and sustainable working conditions within legal aids and with our private practitioner partners, so that we've got we can attract and retain a strong and engaged legal aid workforce. And this is also linked to our national programs such as With You and the Independent Children's Lawyer Training Program, so really working on sustaining those as well. We anticipate that working on these priorities will situate legal aids in a much better position in 5 years' time in terms of being able to measure our impact, secure sustainable and adequate funding, safely support people experiencing disadvantage around their legal needs, and increase access to justice. In terms of our next steps in the implementation process, we are working with all the National Legal Aid subject matter working groups to align their work with the strategic plan for the next 5 years, and we've just had a number of national meetings where we've met in person to identify those priorities. And we are already progressing specific national legal aid projects in these areas. We're about to start this week a national data management strategy to build our evidence base. We're also starting this week a strategic communication strategy in terms of how we communicate the legal aid work publicly. And we're at the moment scoping with our partners a domestic and family violence service mapping project. Thanks so much for everyone for their engagement and interest in the plan, and we really look forward to working with you over the next 5 years to see what we can achieve.
So thanks so much, Catherine, for that valuable overview of the strategic plan. I'm delighted now to invite our 3 panel speakers to discuss what this might look like in practice and some of the challenges we'll need to overcome in implementing the plan. On the panel, we have Kimberley Hamer, who is co-chair of the National Legal Aid First Nations Advisory Group and Director of Aboriginal Services at Legal Aid New South Wales. Toby Hemming, who is the CEO of Victoria Legal Aid and the National Legal Aid Civil Law Working Group's Chair. And Nicky Davies, CEO of Legal Aid Queensland and Chair of the NLA Family Law Working Groups. So thanks to all of you for joining us. I want to ask each of you to give us a flavour of the kinds of work you're engaged in currently, how that work makes an impact for your clients and for the justice systems, and where you would like to see National Legal Aid move to. Kimberley, let's start with you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. As Anne-Marie said, I am the Director of Aboriginal Services here at Legal Aid New South Wales. And I'm a proud Bidjigal and Yuin woman from La Perouse in Sydney's southeast. The Aboriginal Services branch at Legal Aid New South Wales works across the organisation in both policy and programs to ensure that our services are culturally appropriate for Aboriginal people and communities. And we also provide advice and guidance and manage a number of our Aboriginal employment programs, as well as other programs related to Aboriginal service delivery. I'm very privileged to be on Gadigal country today and also to represent the First Nations Advisory Group as their co-chair, and as well First Nations services teams across the country and First Nations staff across the country that do really impactful work for legal aid commissions. In terms of what the First Nations Advisory Group does and what we want to achieve for National Legal Aid, first and foremost, we want to have a really strong network across legal aid that is able to influence and drive First Nations business capability and priorities to enhance services to First Nations clients. We want to share and inform the National Legal Aid Strategic Plan. And whilst we would say that we have probably views on all 6 goals, our focus would really be on goal 3 in relation to closing the gap, delivering culturally safe services and supporting First Nations services and partnering with First Nations legal assistance partners on justice issues. So in doing that, we are often informing joint submissions, NLA joint submissions, and we're also monitoring progress and providing feedback to the NLA directors on ways to improve cultural safety within their legal aids, not just for staff, but also for clients. And in doing that, I think we want to recognise the diversity of our Aboriginal people and clans across the country. So it's important to recognise that diversity, but also find alignment where we can in the work that we're doing. So what do we want to achieve looking ahead to 2030? These are big blue sky big ticket items that we want to see. We want to see recognition and influence in government decision making, for First Nations people to be consulted on those things. We want to work really hard on addressing the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, and in particular the priority reforms, which is where we'll see real transformational work in the legal and justice sector. We want to enable First Nations services groups and teams across each jurisdiction, and that will include having priorities around First Nations employment and First Nations leadership. We want to be able to progress state and territory issues where there are commonalities, where there are common experiences, and that might be in areas that are deeply impacting Aboriginal people across the country, for example, in child protection or out-of-home care and deaths in custody. And I think what underlies all of that is making sure that we promote our human rights agenda across the work that NLA does. I think that's it from me for now. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks very much, Kimberley. And can I call on you, Toby, to go next?
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, and thanks, Kimberley, and my thanks also to you, Catherine. Look, I'd just like to acknowledge country here in Melbourne, Naarm. I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to all First Nations people who are here this afternoon for this really terrific event. So thank you. Look, I just wanted to tell you a bit about the work of civil law practices in legal aid commissions and a bit about what we're aiming to achieve here through national legal aid. So I guess in terms, firstly, of what we do, so the work of the civil law legal practices in the legal aid commissions around the country, and indeed the National Civil Law Network, it's critical, absolutely critical in protecting people's rights and promoting inclusion and accountability. Just to give you a flavour of what the national network is and will continue to focus on, I'd sort of just give you a quick sense of what Victoria Legal Aid Civil Justice Team does, and it does loads. For example, our Economic and Social Rights Team helps address problems that would otherwise lead to entrenched disadvantage. So, for example, problems relating to social security, tenancy, significant fines, debt, and of course the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And in that regard, we support people, among other things, with internal reviews or external reviews through the Administrative Review Tribunal. We also work to help people obtain and retain employment, to remain engaged with key service and education providers, to receive fair compensation, and critically to use the law to help stop discrimination, sexual harassment, and other unlawful conduct from occurring. The team also provides advice and representation to asylum seekers and other disadvantaged non-citizens, primarily in relation to judicial review of administrative decisions. They also provide advice and representation in relation to laws that impact the liberty, dignity, and autonomy of people with a mental health diagnosis or a cognitive disability. So that includes, for example, working to minimise restrictions on those rights, as well as helping ensure the justice and health systems operate more fairly. And the team also provides legal information and support to people affected by natural disasters here in Victoria. So you can see that it's work that covers a really diverse collection of legal issues and that they are fundamental in affecting people's lives and well-being. So getting assistance with these issues can also prevent other legal issues from arising or escalating, and importantly also avoid having people then come to interact with crisis-based systems like the justice or child protection systems. And also, it's a busy team, there's lots of work, and through the network as well, but using what we know through our really diverse practice experience. We also work to help shape laws and systems. We do this at Victoria Legal Aid, but critically through national legal aid, we're able to amplify that work on behalf of all jurisdictions. And so national legal aid is very much a unifying force, and it really strengthens the capacity of all legal aid commissions to help disadvantaged Australians access legal services and to address, as you've heard, some really significant and important issues. In terms of the future, through national legal aid, we want to continue to help shape social security and disability reform, including those that have come out of the really important robo-debt and disability royal commissions. And we want to do that alongside lived experienced experts, that is people whose lives are or have been directly affected by these services and systems. We also want to continue to engage with the Administrative Review Tribunal to support improved access to legal assistance and client-centred processes. And also on our list, it's a lengthy list, but we want to see a national approach to disaster legal assistance, which of course is also provided through the CLC sector. And we think it's really important that we continue to build the evidence base, as Catherine mentioned, regarding, in this case, the value of civil legal assistance and the vital assistance that's provided by legal aids, by CLCs, but also by Aboriginal legal services. We all know that civil legal assistance delivers huge benefits, but I think we need to do a bit more to really demonstrate that in an evidence-based way to government. So there's a lot on and a lot to achieve through national legal aid, but that's just a flavour. So thanks very much. Back to you, Anne-Marie.
Very much, Toby. And now Nicky Davies, last but not least.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Turrbal and Jagera peoples, the traditional owners of the land on which I am coming to you from, and acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge the First Nations custodians of the lands where our 13 regional offices stand in Queensland and pay respect to their elders' law, custom and creation spirits. So at National Legal Aid, we have 3 relevant working groups to family law. There's the Family Law Working Group that looks after family law, domestic and family violence and child protection. We then have the Dispute Resolution Working Group and the Child Support Working Group. We represent and advise people experiencing vulnerability at one of the most emotionally charged times of their lives, when they are dealing with family law matters. We strive to prevent domestic and family violence. We know that over 80% of family law representation matters involve violence. And so by assisting people in the courts to resolve matters safely, we are intervening at one of the most dangerous times for victim survivors. We provide independent children's lawyers, which is crucial in ensuring children understand what is happening and have a voice in family law matters that affect them. We facilitate family dispute resolution processes relating to arrangements for children and in property matters. And we provide dedicated child support legal assistance nationally. Going forward, we want to be included in the implementation of the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children. We would like to see increased funding for legal aid around the country to deliver and expand our services in family law. We are hoping for greater collaboration across the legal assistance sector to identify gaps in services related to domestic and family violence and ways to fill them, as well as streamlining processes. We want to work to implement the priority recommendations from the Family Law Council's recent 3 reports on family law and the rapid review of prevention and of domestic and family violence. And finally, we'd like to work to implement recommendations and reform needed so badly in the child support system. Anne-Marie.
It's really illuminating to hear about the breadth of some of the work in your areas of law. If we could now go around the panel again, could perhaps each of you could outline some of the challenges for your area of work. So, Kimberley, let's start with you again.
Sure. I think that for First Nations people receiving our services, we can get all of the information we need around the challenges just by looking at the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, and in particular the Productivity Commission's recent annual data compilation report, which really shows that most of the socio-economic targets and outcomes are not going to be met at this stage. Primarily, we are seeing those targets not being met in the justice sector. So we're seeing more First Nations people in contact with the justice system, adults in custody, youth justice, out-of-home care, domestic and family violence. And really that can be stemming from some local issues, but might not be, not limited to things like bail laws and practices, the prevalence of domestic and family violence issues impacting young people and children. The other thing is we're not seeing a lot of data as well relating to that thing. So we have a lack of legal aid data on First Nations clients and impact. I know certainly from my perspective and the work that my team does, we have a lot of anecdotal data. We have a lot of qualitative data, but not a lot of quantitative data to really show the benefits of what we're doing for First Nations people. At Legal Aid New South Wales, we will be doing some work on data sovereignty, Indigenous data sovereignty, and building a governance framework, and we'll certainly be looking to bring that to National Legal Aid and how we might be able to do that at a national level. Another challenge is really it's recruitment, retention, and development of First Nations staff. I think most legal aid commissions across the country are keen to increase their First Nations staff so that our staff reflect our client base. We have 24% Aboriginal clients across the country, much more in certain states like the Northern Territory. It's really important that we have First Nations people elevated and their voices elevated so that we can make impactful change for First Nations clients. Another challenge is really around collaboration and partnerships across the sector in an environment, particularly where we might want to engage with Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. It's hard to do so in an environment where there are limited resources and we're really stretched just to be able to deliver services. And finally, I think you can see, based on all of the things I've said beforehand, that we need to build an understanding across our legal aid commissions around how we actually implement closing the gap priority reforms. There are 4 key priority reforms around partnerships, capacity building, transforming the way we work, and data sharing. And that is the real transformational piece. That's where we'll see real change for First Nations people getting services from us. So it's important from my perspective and from a First Nations advisory group perspective that we do what we can to support self-determination of First Nations people while also being able to deliver culturally appropriate services as mainstream organisations and government organisations at that. I'll hand back to you, Anne-Marie.
Okay, thank you so much, Kimberley. Over to you, Toby, to talk about challenges in the civil law environment.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I'd just like to also just echo Kimberley's comments, particularly in relation to attracting and retaining a diverse workforce. It's a challenge for all organisations and it's a challenge for each of the legal aid commissions. It's really critical that our workforce reflects the community we serve. I think that's our licence, it's our obligation as well. So I just wanted to back those comments in. But in terms of the civil law space, look, as the cost of living pressures continue to increase, people's legal issues also rise, and that falls into categories including, housing, social security, disability support, or their treatment at work. We're also operating, as we all know, within systems that are under increasing pressure. The relatively new Administrative Review Tribunal is, still dealing with really significant backlogs, and the civil needs of legal aid clients also continue to increase. We want to, and I think we're really well placed to play a role both in meeting individual need, but also in contributing to system reforms. That's where we really get the really significant impact, where we're able to reach and have a positive influence for, a much broader section of the community. Probably the most well-known example is the work that we were involved in relating to robo-debt. And as I mentioned earlier, we're continuing to work really closely with government to both inform and implement some of those reforms, but more broadly to implement reforms that promote people's rights, fairness and inclusion right across different systems. And of course, to mention funding, we also, of course, have the continuing and ongoing challenge of needing to ensure that we have a sustainable base so that we're able to continue the absolutely critical work that we do. Just by way of example on that, our permanent protection visa program provides really important legal assistance to asylum seekers and refugees. And in fact, across legal aids, I think we provided around 5,000 of these specialist services last year alone. Yet, due to the short-term funding cycles that we operate in, these services are at risk of ending imminently, but they're so important. And I thought, rather than using my own words on that final point, I'd share the words of one of our clients, Mohammed. It's a pseudonym, but Mohammed was assisted through this program, and he said this. He said, "I've had many sorrows in my life. I lived through multiple wars in Syria and Iraq. I fled to Australia and ended up in the immigration detention system for a long time. Victoria Legal Aid helped me to get back my life back and give me back my freedom. At the moment, I feel very happy and free. I'm studying English. I'm working on my language skills to integrate into the community in a better way." It's one story. That's Mohammed's story. There's 1,000 stories across the country through legal aid commissions, but I think it illustrates just how important that work is. We've also just got the shared challenge of building a sustainable civil legal assistance services that can keep having an impact like that, but also continuing to help shape laws and systems that really go to the heart of the fabric of the community that we're all a part of. Thank you. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks so much, Toby, and thank you for those comments from Mohammed that highlight the life-changing work that legal aids around the country do every day. Nicky, significant challenges also in family law?
Never. Yes, so legal aid services across the country are facing some critical challenges in family law. As many of you will be aware, there have been significant changes in family law legislation and in the structure of the courts, as well as in the way legal aid is funded to deliver services. These changes are impacting on how we do our work. The most critical challenges are around, once again, funding gaps. For example, the National Access to Justice Partnership for this year does not include funding for the significant increase in work required in the court's case management pathway. We are also significantly underfunded to administer and deliver legal services for the Commonwealth Family Violence Cross-Examination of Parties scheme. In most states and territories, it is a struggle to secure private practitioners for legal aid work in family law, both as ICLs and party lawyers. Practitioners are also experiencing increased workloads as a result of the court reforms, all of which impact the number of people experiencing disadvantage we have capacity to provide legal assistance to right across the country. We have raised and are continuing to advocate with the Attorney General's Department and the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia and the Family Court of Western Australia around these issues, and will continue to do so. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
The real challenges ahead, but also you give us a vision of where we want to be in 5 years' time. The National Legal Aid Strategic Plan is going to be a very important tool in setting the course for our work going forward and our collaborative ways of working. Throughout the session, some of you may have been asking questions. I can't see any, but if you would like to ask questions, we do have time for questions.
And so to do that, you can go to the Q&A part of Zoom and type your question in. I might kick it off. I might ask Nicky a question if that's all right. And just in terms of in 5 years' time, Nicky, what would you like to see the situation being in the family law space?
So that again, Catherine, you surprised me by asking me a question.
Sorry to put you on the spot. In 5 years' time, so 2030, what would your vision be in terms of seeing how the family law, how legal aid provided family law and support of the family law system?
I would like there to be a lot less gender-based violence in terms of protecting both victim survivors, but importantly children. And that's across family law, domestic and family violence and child protection. Many of families that are in the child protection system are there because of domestic and family violence. So that issue underpins most of the work that we do. And I would hope that we have adequate funding to ensure that those who do need our assistance can get it right across Australia, that we're able to pay private practitioners adequately so that they are prepared to continue to do our work. We know from the recent private practitioner census that many practitioners want to do legal aid work, and as Anne-Marie said, they see it as part of their commitment to their community. But just from an economic perspective, some of them are not able to continue to do that. So we would want funding to be able to address that, to ensure that people are protected and that the voices of children are appropriately heard in all matters before the courts that affect their futures.
So Nicky, we have a related question in the chat from IK, and that is, reflecting on the crisis of family violence in our community, what are the most impactful changes you think government can make to better support victim survivors?
And I think that ensuring that there are services available, both support services, legal services, mental health supports, substance abuse services that are available really to the whole family, so that safe measures can be put in place to ensure that wherever possible, the safety of victim survivors and children can be assured going forward, or if they can't be assured, that orders and other arrangements are put in place to ensure people's safety.
Question from Rachel about one of our particular conflicts, and it is, there hasn't been any mention of South Sudanese community yet. Given their overrepresentation in the justice system, are there any specific initiatives to provide legal support you can mention or plans to do so? No, there aren't any specific initiatives that I know of at this point in time. Catherine, do you have anything to add to that?
I guess I'm not probably the best, but I can talk, but what my response would be that the legal aid commissions develop community-based services as needed. And I know that some legal aids have been focused on particular communities and supporting those communities and particularly those that are overrepresented. And so this is a national plan that has the high level priorities in terms of what we're aiming to achieve, but absolutely legal aids around the country do focus on the needs of the community and try and tailor their services to meet those needs.
The final question is from Habits, and it is just like in health, prevention is better than cure. How do the legal system, our society, can prevent people needing to use legal aid services? Maybe, Toby, you could have a go at answering that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anne-Marie, and thanks for the question. I mean, that's really the crux of what we're trying to do in respect of the civil law work. It's legal aid commissions around the country do extraordinary jobs on an individualised basis, providing services to clients in a whole range of different areas. But necessarily we're limited in what we're able to do, and so the real significant problems, I feel, are dealt with at a systems level. And so I spoke briefly about strategic litigation, for example, the robo-debt strategic litigation, which has led to profound and positive changes. And there are myriad examples of significant litigation which legal aid commissions around the country engage in with a view to bringing about system change, and that's really critical. I also feel that engaging with the systems and the organisations who, I guess, frankly, can be part of the problem or are the problem is a really critical part of the work that we're looking to do as well, whether it's engagement with Centrelink or DSS, or whether it's with the courts, or whether it's with other big organisations, but also through the law reform activity, which we identify as part of our work through the Civil Law Network. I'm only new in this position, but one of the key things that the group identifies are common problems that we experience across the country with a view to progressing law reform proposals, engaging directly with government and departments to try and bring about that really significant change. So that's where the huge impact is, not to diminish for a moment the work that we do in respect of individual clients, but to get the biggest bang, I think it's about trying to change systems and change laws and engage in good, productive discussions with governments and parts of governments, organisations and the like.
Thanks, Toby. We have a question in relation to First Nations families and kids. How are legal aids prioritising and addressing the emerging access to justice risks for First Nations families and kids? Well, we are trying to do that under our strategic plan, aren't we, Catherine?
We are, and I might get, not to put Kimberley on the spot, but yeah, get her to help me, well, assist in the answer if she wants to. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the plan, the focus of the National Legal Aid Plan is to look at the Closing the Gap priority reforms in particular, and work with our legal assistance partners to increase the number of Aboriginal community controlled organisations who are delivering this work, and also make sure that our work is culturally safe as well. Many of the legal aids already have specific tailored services that focus on supporting Aboriginal children and families, and we will look at working with those legal aids to expand and focus on that to absolutely address the issues that are emerging. And I guess within the working groups as well, we've prioritised partnering with other parts of the legal assistance sector, but just particularly around raising the issues around the reforms and the changes needed to, address the issues that are occurring in many states and territories at the moment around youth justice and the overrepresentation, particularly of young Aboriginal children. So that is our plan.
And I would agree with everything that Catherine just said. I think the important thing is around, obviously we have two targets within the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, one in relation to overrepresentation of young people in custody or youth detention, and the other in relation to overrepresentation of Aboriginal children in out-of-home care. Both, the out-of-home care is significantly worse. It's not on target to be met. Youth justice is still not on target to be met, but not quite as bad as out-of-home care. I think I'm going to mirror what Toby and Nicky said around that early intervention piece and making sure that we provide wraparound multidisciplinary services. I think where we're not dealing with legal issues in isolation, so where we're looking cross-divisionally across practices, across family, crime and civil, to help a child or a young person with any legal issues they have, that can certainly help in terms of kind of trying to stop their continued entry into the justice system or continuation in the justice system. There are some things that I can speak about Legal Aid New South Wales. There are some things that Legal Aid New South Wales have done. The first is really speaking of partnerships, the Legal Assistance for Families Partnership Agreement with DCJ, our department that is responsible for child protection in the state, and the Aboriginal Legal Service, to have early referrals for children, Aboriginal children in contact with the department. And there's been significant number of referrals in, I don't know if we're over in the thousands yet, but we're getting close if we're not. And obviously there are work that we're also doing in terms of children at a slightly higher age, so around the teen age before they leave care, and how we might be able to provide really tailored, intensive legal support to children who are in accommodation as opposed to in foster care. So there's lots of things that we can do. And I guess the one last thing I'll say before I hand over is that we're also doing some work on developing some client journeys where we're looking at a person's life cycle through legal aid. And we're looking at them from when they're a child right through to adulthood, and we're going to try and identify where we have opportunities to intervene and where we have opportunities to do more, whether or not it is that wraparound service model, providing support services, engaging with the sector, engaging with other practice areas. What our plan is to identify those opportunities and potentially look at how we might change service design down in the future. That's something that Legal Aid New South Wales is doing as well. That will have a benefit for children, fingers crossed.
So Kimberley, Legal Aid New South Wales is doing some fantastic work in that area, but I think that there are similar initiatives throughout the country in that area as well. Nicky, the next question is about ICL training. It's quite specific. It's in relation to the ICL training. Are we looking at coordinating this at a national level and changing the current phase 1 and phase 2 training?
Thanks, Anne-Marie. We already do coordinate the ICL training at a national level. There's a national ICL program that is sort of operated through the ICL website, and that's for people who would like to be ICLs and need to do that training, and also ongoing training and development for ICLs. So it is coordinated already, and we work out where we're going to deliver the phase 2 training on a coordinated basis around the country each year. I don't think there'll be any major changes to the current phase 1 and phase 2 training. Obviously, when there are changes to legislation and court processes and procedures, we review that training to ensure that it's up to date. But I don't think that there will be major changes. We've also recently launched a special ICL training called Safe and Together with the Safe and Together Institute. And that is a framework that's been adopted by the Federal Circuit and Family Court of Australia since 2021, and by a number of child protections departments around Australia. And so we've developed and designed and prepared virtual training package to ensure that ICLs are aligned in with the way that the courts are considering and operating in relation to children's matters at the moment. Also, National Legal Aid is just about to take over the National Independent Children's Lawyer Training Day. The next one will be in Hobart in October 2026, and is aligned with the Family Law Section's big Family Law Conference, which takes place every other year. And now National Legal Aid will be responsible for coordinating and delivering that training day as well.
Exhausted our questions. So I think we'll leave it there. So on behalf of everyone attending the session, I want to give my heartfelt thanks to all of our speakers, our 3 panellists, Kimberley, Nicky and Toby, to Catherine for outlining the National Legal Aid Strategic Plan, and to the Attorney-General for her words at the start of the session. I hope we have been able to give you some insight into the National Legal Aid priorities over the next 5 years, and that you'll think about how you could engage with or support us in our work. Thanks to the thank you to the organisers of today's session, and thank you all for making time to join us today for the launch of the National Legal Aid Strategic Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.